What's up, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast Rank Show. We've got wide receiver ranks for Week 6. I'm Chris Welsh, and joining me as always is Pat Fitzmaurice and Andrew Erickson. Some pretty high rankers this week. We're going to be talking about our top 36 wide receiver ranks, some names in between, helping you guys make some of the tough decisions. We've got some giveaway stuff we're going to be talking about. And as always, we give a little shout out on our weekly ranks contest that we do every single week. We have the weekly ones. And this week, yes, Andrew Erickson did do good on this show, like I predicted. Yes, Fitzy did good. But boys, we got to give some flowers to our dear friend Derek Brown for finishing number 1 in Week 5 ranks, Fitzy. Derek Brown is also top 5 on the show. So how this works is it's like an elimination. I think one of you guys is going to get eliminated at the end of the season, and Debro is going to have to join the show. Or it'll be me, and then, Erickson, you can host, which probably people would want. So,
no.
Fitzy, what do you guys think? Debro, Fitzy, we'll start with you. Debro won. You ended up finishing 32, Fitzy. So, no small order there. Fantasy Pros are rocking in the accuracy contest.
Yeah, although, Jeff Probst is going to snuff up my torch pretty soon to get Debro on the ranking show at this rate. So I guess whoever's following the primer this year has to be doing pretty well because Debro is throwing out some crack advice.
Yeah, he's going nuts here. But Erickson, you get the flowers for this show. You did finish 17. So again, no small order there. Your articles kind of laying people out in the betting side, and here the primer actually working very well for Debro. But shout out to you, Erickson, in 17. I think, like we were talking about this off air, I had predicted for some reason, I felt that you were going to rank highest on this show, and it had to do with Waddle, and Waddle definitely waddled out.
Yes, Jalen Waddle being a little bit higher than consensus on Waddle definitely helped give me a boost in the rankings, but that's all in the past. Again, doesn't matter anymore. No one cares about what we did last week. We care about getting it right for Week 6. So, just got to read Debro's primer this week, and then I'll finish in the top 5.
Yeah, I'm just going to do that. Remember when I was like, I'm the one of the best tight end rankers? Gone. That's gone. By the way, the number 1 tight end ranker in the world, Andrew Erickson. You're the tight end whisperer now. So there you go. So that's how that's going to roll today. So giving the top 3, though, we're talking about us. It wasn't just Derek Brown. The top 3 in the accuracy contest. So again, Debro, go check out the primer. What a better promotion for it ever than for him to finish. I think he's finished in the top 2 twice already. He's 4 over the whole season, and he finished 1 last week. We also had Matt Harmon. Matt Harmon finished from Yahoo, finished 2 overall, and Brad Beatson from Bandit Football finished 3. So Debro, Harmon, and Beatson all finishing inside the top 3. So shout out to those guys. Shout out to these guys here on their rank. And if you guys want to check out where the ranks are every single week, go to fantasypros.com/rankings. You listening probably don't care as much about the accuracy contest outside of if you want to dial up some of the weekly ranks based on your own preferences of the people that rank the highest. You can do that. You can play around with it, or you can just check the full consensus, fantasypros.com/rankings, and you can see how it moves and shakes throughout the week. Before we get into the wide receivers, which we're just about to do, we've got a wide receiver for you to win some awesome free autograph stuff, because this is your chance to win a signed A.J. Brown Eagles jersey for free, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com. All you got to do, go to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form. Then you can do a couple different things. You can download the Fantasy Pros app, leave a review on the podcast. You can follow us on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Fantasy Pros, and you can do all of those things, and they all give you more entries. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the podcast. So if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications so you are alerted when new episodes are up, and so you can take A.J. Brown home. I think he wants you to take him home. He wants to be anywhere but Philadelphia, so he wants to be with you.
Yeah, does the jersey come with some sort of book to read while it comes very sitting clean on the sideline?
It comes very clean and unused. Like, he only had 1 or 2 targets in the game, and a book. Maybe some tears. I don't know. Really could look good behind you, Erickson. Good little A.J. Brown behind you. Yeah?
I'll rock the AJB every day.
Like you to wear it. And catch more passes than A.J. Brown. All right, gentlemen, let's get into this. Let's take a look at the big board for wide receivers in Week 6. The big board looks as such. Puka Nacua coming in at number 1, followed by Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jaxon, Smith-Njigba, Drake London, Emeka Egbuka, and Romeo Doubs as your top 6. 7 to 12, we've got Ja'Marr Chase, Devontae Adams, George Pickens, Deebo Samuel, Xavier Worthy, and Garrett Wilson. By the way, shout out to, we did have the bounce back Ja'Marr Chase game. So that was probably very good for Erickson as well, which helped in the ranks because he really bounced back, kind of back into the good graces. And actually, we didn't even have this planned here. I just want to get quick takes on this. Fitzy, what is your take in any potential improvement for Ja'Marr Chase and or T. Higgins with Joe Flacco now as the quarterback and looking like might be as early as this week?
Potential improvement if Flacco can tap back into that good YOLO Joe Flacco we were seeing the last couple of years where he was just cutting it loose and throwing into danger a lot of the times. But if you have a receiver with a quarterback like that, throwing into danger, you don't care. You just want your guy to get those downfield catches. So that's a potential bright side thing. But then again, like Flacco has kind of been showing his age. The 40-year-old Flacco averaging 5.1 yards per pass attempt this year so far. And the bad thing is, like, part of it is that he has just crumbled when under fire this year. And the Browns have allowed, I think, like the 9th highest pressure rate in the league. Well, the Bengals have allowed the 4th highest pressure rate. So I don't think that's going to get any better for Joe Flacco. It's just, whether he can do a little bit better under fire, I have my doubts.
Erickson, you've had the trust, you had the belief in Ja'Marr Chase. Browning has looked atrocious. Does Flacco do anything for you for Chase moving forward, or do you think it's still just a volatile situation?
I think it's still a volatile situation. I don't really think it's like that massive of an upgrade, to be totally honest. Joe Flacco can't move, and he's playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. Like, that's the big problem. That's why he got benched with the Cleveland Browns, because he couldn't move anywhere, and he was stuck behind a terrible offensive line. So I think it's just the Bengals are just so desperate. Like, they're trying to look at any other option, and for some reason they couldn't get Jameis Winston. Like, that was like the one thing that could have saved this team, or if Joe Burrow is somehow able to come back from this injury. And because they acquired Joe Flacco, it means like Jameis Winston's not going to be a Bengal at any point. So I am not optimistic. I would be talked about Chase as a sell high off the monster game against the Detroit Lions. Keep in mind, that game was at home, where we talked about that in the show last week, where Jake Browning's splits are much better playing at home versus on the road. And the Lions lost like 3 of their starting defensive backs in the game. And then you started Chase getting all that production, especially late in the fourth quarter. So on the road this week at Green Bay, where he's going to have like 5 seconds, he wishes he had 5 seconds to throw, half a second to get the ball out to a guy he's never thrown to before, assuming that Joe Flacco even starts this game. We don't know when he's going to be the starter, if he'll start this week, next week, whatever. I'm not really optimistic. And yes, Chase is going to have big games here and there because he can make a 80-yard play out of anything. But it's going to be a very, very rocky ride. And I'm not nearly as bullish on him this week as I was last week.
I'd have really liked Russell Wilson to go there. That would have been one I thought that have worked well, but it's Joe Flacco. All right, to the wide receivers we do want to talk about. Full on, Romeo Doubs comes in at wide receiver 6 this week on ECR. Fitzy, you've got him at 7. Erickson, you've got him at 9. So you guys are all in the top 10 camp, both a tiny bit lower than consensus right now. Fitzy, what's got you guys so jazzed up about Romeo Doubs this week?
Yeah, and I've been a little behind consensus on Odunze, I think, most of the year, but I'm getting a little closer to consensus. I mean, amazing what a good offensive system can do for a talented player, isn't it? Romeo Doubs is pretty clearly the lead receiver in the Bears' offense. Like, before the season, it was sort of hard to tell how things were going to shake out with the Romeo Doubs, DJ Moore combination. Well, Odunze is the main man. He is a 25.5% target share and 42% air yard share. There are only 7 players in the league with a higher air yard share, and 2 of them are out for the year, Malik Nabers and Tyreek Hill. And one is named Calvin Austin III. So I do feel pretty good about Odunze, and I'm excited to see his matchup with rookie Trey Amos, who's playing pretty well for the Commanders, but I do feel like Odunze should win that matchup.
Erickson, Odunze at 6 is a pretty big marker. We've got a 4-star matchup rating, which we've got the matchup ratings over on the Fantasy Pros rankings page. Only 2 wide receivers in the top 12 have that rating. It's him and actually the next guy we're going to talk about. And it's also the start sit is given an A+. Do you buy that Odunze is in one of the best spots and is going to absolutely eat this week?
I think that he's in a very good spot. But like I pointed out last week when I talked about the Chargers wide receivers against the Commanders, who ended up having the most productive day for fantasy, it was Lamar Jackson. Now, that wasn't because he saw a boatload of targets, because he caught a touchdown, but the slot receivers in that specific matchup between Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen, they were the most productive. And we saw Quentin Johnston put up his first dud of the season as the more perimeter wide receiver. So that's the only thing I'd push back with Odunze. Again, he has run hot on touchdowns, seeing all the high value targets in this offense, and that's always in play regardless of where you line up. But the Commanders are more of a slot funnel defense. So if Chicago does something different where Ben Johnson during the bye week was in the lab thinking, hey, let's use Luther Burden in the slot. Like, let's play this guy. So this is a Monday night game. Luther Burden could have a breakout game in this matchup. That's the only thing I would say, and that could technically, water down Odunze, but it would only be a 1 week blip, and you'd be going right back to Odunze anyway. Regardless, he's a top 10 receiver.
The only other guy we're going to talk about in this one is Xavier Worthy, who comes in at ECR wide receiver 11. You guys are a little bit on opposite ends. Fitzy, you've got him at 15, so we're still in the same general space, but it's a difference between a wide receiver 1, obviously, and a 2. Erickson, you have him at 10, a little bit higher, so you're kind of designating like he is an absolute must start. 15 kind of is the same, but also the last week without Rashee Rice, so enjoy your Xavier Worthys while you got them. Erickson, let's start with you. You're a little bit higher on Worthy. Is this also going to be the last week? I know this is about this week in general, but I'm curious at what you think this matchup is good for him, and do you also kind of think this is going to be the last week we're really, really relevant on Xavier Worthy with Rice coming back?
I think that he stays relevant. I think what you see is the Tyquan Thorntons, the Marquise Browns, like those guys really fade into the background. Mahomes, those guys are so inconsistent anyway. I'm sure that Mahomes would rather throw to somebody else like a Rashee Rice. But I think Worthy has been solid over the last 2 weeks since he's come back from that shoulder injury. He has 250 air yards over the last 2 weeks, 17 targets, 22% target share. He also has 3 end zone targets, but hasn't scored. And it's kind of funny because every other Chiefs receiver has scored. Like Thornton scoring touchdowns, Marquise Brown is scoring touchdowns, Travis Kelce scoring touchdowns, but Worthy hasn't found the end zone. So I like him a lot in this spot to score. The Lions, we just talked about it, they don't have anyone left in their secondary. Everybody's hurt. DJ Reed is hurt. Terran Arnold's hurt. Khalil Dorsey's hurt. And that was the reason why we saw the Bengals offense start to score points in the fourth quarter, because their secondary pieces started getting injured all over the place. So against the Lions, depleted secondary, Xavier Worthy loves to take the top off the defense. I think he's slated for some big plays, so I like starting him as a backhand wide receiver 1 this week.
Fitzy, your 15 rank, is it relative to like you're a little bit dicey on him? Is it just a number, baby? Is it just a number that doesn't really necessarily mean anything and you still really like him? What's your take on Worthy this week?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to move him up just a bit because of all the Lions cornerback injuries. I mean, they do have 3 cornerbacks out for this game, which could mean a feast for Worthy. But it still does seem like the Chiefs' passing attack is sort of an ensemble affair. Like some Worthy, some Travis Kelce, some Tyquan Thornton, some Juju Smith-Schuster. I do agree with Erickson that, we like Worthy more now than we will in a week when Rashee Rice is back. Although Worthy is going to remain fantasy relevant, and I do think it's the guys like Juju, Tyquan Thornton, who you won't be able to use even in larger leagues. But, in the 2 games since he's been back from the shoulder injury, Worthy had one pretty big game against the Ravens, 5 for 83 receiving plus 2 carries for 38 yards. Then just kind of a so-so game against the Jaguars last week, 6 for 42. So I don't know, maybe he has the big explosive play or 2 this week against this injury-depleted Lions secondary like we saw the Bengals have late in that game last week. But, yeah, I don't know what the target share is going to look like this week.
All right, we got a lot to cover in wide receiver 2s and 3s, so we're going to just get right into what wide receiver 13 through 24 looks like, because we got a bunch of names to hit. Teteroa McMillan comes in at number 13, Cortland Sutton at 14, Jalen Waddle, top 15, Quentin Johnston, A.J. Brown, Marvin Harrison, DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman at 20, followed by Keenan Allen, Brian Thomas, Stephon Diggs, and Ladd McConkey. That is your top 13 through 24. Let's start with Quentin Johnston. You guys are more than welcome to also throw a little bit of of Ladd into that discussion as he comes in at number 24 here. Fitzy, you've got him at 17. Erickson, you've got him at 21. Fitzy, let's start with you. You guys are both a tiny bit lower. Erickson quite a bit more. Quentin Johnston didn't have the big week that he's been having. I would say none of the wide receivers, though, took over. Like, everyone's like, oh, Ladd can bounce back. Like, he got a touchdown, but the volume looked similar. It just looked similar across the board. Just Quentin Johnston was a little bit less involved. Do you think that was more the anomaly? Or do you think, he is maybe in line to start losing some shares as the season goes on?
That's the thing we don't know. I think it's going to be volatile week to week because Quentin Johnston has to share targets with Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen. We're going to get some unpredictable weekly results with all of these guys. In his first 4 games, Quentin Johnston averaged 9 targets a game and had at least 7 targets in each of those games. But then in week 5, only 4 targets. Keenan Allen had 9, Ladd McConkey 7. And now the concern is that the Chargers' passing game isn't going to be as effective without Joe Alt, and that's sort of what we saw against the Giants last week. Justin Herbert was under duress for a lot of the day, had only 166 passing yards, averaged 5.7 yards per attempt. So I do think the Quentin Johnston emergence is real. He does seem to have fixed his hands problems. But the big picture view of QJ's fantasy value has to factor in the target competition, and at least in the short term, it has to factor in the Chargers' offensive line problems too.
Erickson, you've got him at 21. I got a sneaky little suspicion that maybe Ladd McConkey has a number that is higher than 21, but you tell me. I'm not looking at your ranks. I might be completely wrong. What do you think about Quentin Johnston, and how are you ranking out the 3 Chargers wide receivers?
So you actually are wrong. I have Ladd ranked last. I just have Johnson ranked the highest, but I'm lower on the entire Chargers receiver room, I guess, compared to consensus, because I'm concerned about this offensive line. Like, this is a major issue, and you lose multiple pieces. These cluster injuries cause a lot of concerns for me with Justin Herbert. Again, seeing it last week, all the receivers kind of across the board a little bit down. And I guess with Johnson specifically, I do think that his role overlaps the least when it comes to like Ladd and Keenan, because those guys are using him a little bit more in the slot. Johnson, obviously the big playmaker, obviously has been a focal point in the red zone. But if there are offensive line issues and Justin Herbert has to get the ball out quicker, well, Quentin Johnston has the fewest targets when Justin Herbert has been under pressure this season. He has the lowest target share of the 3 receivers. He also has the highest average depth of target on the team. So if Herbert doesn't have time to sit back there and throw the ball deep to Quentin Johnston, then he's not going to see as many targets. So I think that they're all kind of in that wide receiver 2 territory. Like, that's why I have him outside the top 20, but at wide receiver 21, because I think we're probably best getting one guy that like hits in a big way, and the other guys are probably more like floor plays, just because I think the overall ceiling is a little bit capped just based on the injuries. Now it is Miami. So there's always this chance that, hey, this defense is just so bad it doesn't matter. And I'm really interested to see what Greg Roman does offensively, where, okay, we know this is a really bad run defense, but we're also down to our 3rd and 4th string running backs. Like, does it make sense for me as the play caller to be like, all right, let's feature these Jags in a good matchup, or do I just give my ball to Justin Herbert because he's the best player on the team and he's going to win this game? Because, yes, Miami is worse against the run, but I think that they can be pretty easily beat through the air as well. It's just a matter of how teams have attacked them. It's been on the ground mostly. So that's something I'm interested in seeing. And I'm not saying that I'm super confident with the Chargers rankings. I'm not sure if you guys feel different, but I feel like I am hedging a little bit, ranking them all like in the 20s.
I think that's the problem at the end of the day, is the hedge that you play. Luckily, they're all kind of like relevant-ish, but it seems to be like 2 of the 3 guys every single week. I think this is a good matchup for Quentin Johnston this week. We'll see where it spans out between Ladd and Keenan Allen. A.J. Brown, can you trust him? That feels like the weekly question. It's getting deeper and more and bigger, and super chats and everything. Everybody wants to know about A.J. Brown. Can we start him? Can we start him? He is now fallen to ECR wide receiver 17. But you 2 fine gentlemen are still ranking him higher. Erickson, you've got him at 14. And we're going to go back to Fitzy, though, because Fitz, you still have him as a wide receiver 1. You've got him at 11 this week. I have a feeling this might be about the matchup some, but you tell us. Devontae Smith ate big last week. Can A.J. Brown get back into style?
Yeah, it does seem like a get-right game and maybe a squeaky wheel game for A.J. Brown, who seems less than thrilled with his role so far in the Eagles offense this season. Like, he's currently wide receiver in 43 in half-point PPR fantasy scoring. And the guys just behind him, by the way, Calvin Ridley, T. Higgins, and Jamison Williams. Talk about a disappointing group early on in 2025. But yeah, the Eagles are not as run-heavy this year as they were last year, but they're still the 6th run-heaviest team in the league. And passing game just hasn't always looked great under new offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo. Like, talk to an Eagles fan and they will complain for an hour about what the Eagles' offense has looked like this season. But A.J. Brown does have a 25.9% target share so far and a 36.3% air yard share. And the matchup against the Giants is a good one. Giants have given up a league-high 74 receptions to wide receivers. They've given up the second most receiving yards to wide receivers, and their collection of cornerbacks, Paulson Adebo, Andrew Phillips, Cordell Flott, just not all that fearsome.
Erickson, is this the situation like we talked about with Jamar Chase where it was like, boy, it's just been getting bad? He's got to get it this week. And if he doesn't get it, then maybe we're going to start like really, really dropping ranks. But the matchup also looks pretty good here. What do you think? What's your take on A.J. Brown this week?
Well, the volume has been there for him the last 2 weeks. Like, he's had 8+ targets in back-to-back games. So this isn't a week 1 occurrence where he's just not getting targeted at all. So the opportunities are there for him. They're trying to get him the ball. And even in a tough matchup last week against Patrick Surtain, like, he was able to produce something. I mean, he did a lot more than some receivers do when they go up against the number 1 cornerback in the NFL. So I also think that they missed him on a couple deep shots. In one of the routes that he run downfield, Surtain was not covering him. Jalen Hurts took a shot and just missed him. So that's unfortunately always something that tends to happen with A.J. Brown at times when Jalen Hurts is your quarterback. But I think that this matchup against the Giants is really great, especially when it comes to some of these kill shots downfield. Giants are terrible against deep passes. Everybody knows it. Like, there's a reason why the Saints, one productive play they had was a deep shot to Rashid Shaheed for the long touchdown. Like, that's really all they did through the passing game with Spencer Rattler. So they're going to take shots with A.J. Brown. He had a good game against the Giants last year, 5 catches for 89 yards and a touchdown. I also think that the Eagles, it seemed weird last week how throw heavy they came out of that offense because they were winning that game. And then you look up and think that, oh, Jalen Hurts threw 38 times, so they must have been trailing, but they weren't. Like, this was, hey, we're going to throw the ball more. And I think that the narrative has been, yes, the receivers want to get more involved. I think that's part of it. But I don't think Saquon Barkley's 100% healthy. I mean, he's been on the injury report leading up to this game. He only had 6 carries in the game against the Denver Broncos. So if he is, hampered by this knee injury that he's dealing with, we don't know if he's going to play or not. I think that they could lean on the passing game a little bit more, and you're going to see A.J. Brown continue to see targets. So he wants to play bully ball. He wants to dominate the opposition. And I think against the Giants, little brother in the NFC East, I think the Eagles can finally give him what he wants.
We've got 2 wide receivers in this range where you guys are on complete opposite ends. Fitzy's a little bit closer to ECR, but Erickson, these kind of become about you. You're really, really big on is Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman is wide receiver 20 this week. Fitz, you're a little bit lower than that at 22, but Erickson, you're up at 13. You've got him higher than A.J. Brown, who we we're just talking about. So let's start with you. Michael Pittman this week, very, very high rank for you. He is in that must-start territory.
Yeah, I just think that he's been a guy that has produced every single week this season. And I understand that a lot of it has come down to the touchdowns, but if you look at Michael Pittman in his career, this is what has been missing, right? Has been the touchdowns. He's had a ton of targets. He's had a ton of receptions. And sometimes we get years where the regression finally starts to cash in, where, okay, finally now Michael Pittman finally can score touchdowns. Now, did I think it was going to be Daniel Jones that was going to unlock this side of Michael Pittman? Not necessarily, but he's looking for him in the red zone constantly. So I don't think there's nothing broke with Michael Pittman, so I'm not going to fix it. Like, he's been a top 20 wide receiver basically every single week, except for the game he played against the Denver Broncos. He's going to keep scoring touchdowns. I'm not afraid of the Arizona Cardinals, who look like they're going in the complete opposite direction of a team. So 23% target share, that leads the Colts. And I think what Michael Pittman is putting to rest is last year's what he did on the field. He was playing with a broken back last year. Like, clearly not 100%, and that's why you saw these other guys pop up. There was a Josh Downs versus Michael Pittman discussion. I think that there was some legitimacy to that because Josh Downs is a really talented player in his own right, but I think the alpha when it comes to the receivers is still Michael Pittman, and I don't think he's going to stop scoring touchdowns. So that's why I have him ranked as a top 15 guy.
Fitz, you got him at 22. Is that alpha rank? Is that an alpha rank to you?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not an alpha rank. I have Pittman in several leagues on him, starting him totally confidently. No thought to putting him on the bench. It's just that Pittman ranks 25th in receiving yards right now among wide receivers. And he has 4 touchdowns in 5 games. But he has managed to score 4 touchdowns in 5 games despite only 4 red zone targets so far. So he's definitely outkicking expectations with regard to touchdowns. In fairness, maybe he should be doing a little bit better in receiving yards. Like 2 of the last 3 Colts games, one they won by 21 points, one they won by 34 points, and they scaled back the passing volume a little bit in those blowout victories. But just generally, whenever I'm assessing receivers for rankings, I always consider target counts, reception counts, receiving yardage to be a little more real than touchdown counts. And, Pittman's target count so far just okay. He's averaging 7 targets a game. So it's not like he's been a super high volume guy. I think he's closer to being wide receiver 3 than a wide receiver 1.
Okay, makes sense. Last one in this range, Brian Thomas. What is Brian Thomas? Is he a 1 or a 3 in fantasy? I don't know at this point. He is ECR wide receiver 22. This is another opposite end. Fitzy, you're a couple spots lower. And Erickson, you have him at wide receiver 17. This is a trust category. So I just want to go back to Erickson. You start the positive narrative here. Top 20 wide receiver Brian Thomas. You're still in.
Yes, I'm still in because I've seen improvement from Brian Thomas over the last 2 weeks. First 3 weeks of the season, his catch rate was absolute garbage. Basically catching under 50% of his passes. Did not look like he was on the same page at all with Trevor Lawrence. Now I think that they're still taking signs and still developing that chemistry. But the last 2 weeks, he has a 70% catch rate. He had a season high in yardage last week. Brenton Strange is on injured reserve. The picture is being painted for Brian Thomas Jr. that he's going to continue to improve as he's seeing opportunities in this Jaguars offense. He needs to be the guy. We're still not getting the Travis Hunter, okay, he's going to play on offense only. He's still kind of playing on defense, and they're still trying to figure out how they're going to use him. There's no figuring out who the number 1 wide receiver on the Jaguars is and who's going to lead the team in targets this week against the Seattle Seahawks. His name is Brian Thomas Jr. So that's giving me confidence. I think he's building that confidence as well with what I've seen over the last couple weeks. So I think that he's a top 20 guy. I get the matchup against Seattle is tougher, but I just believe that the guy is talented, and I think that he's on the right trajectory.
Fitz, with that him being at 25, do you feel pessimistic about him, or is this where you're going to paint a positive narrative? Like, does a number 1 wide receiver on the Jags matter at this point anymore? Plus a bad matchup. You tell us, Brian Thomas, 25 for you.
I did move him up, so now I'm in line with ECR at wide receiver 23 because of the Brenton Strange injury. So we know how good Brian Thomas is, but he and Trevor Lawrence just haven't really clicked yet. I am optimistic that BTJ is going to get back on the same sort of track he was on last year. I have a lot of faith in Jaguars head coach Liam Cohen as an offensive choreographer. And someone mentioned this, that last year when Cohen was with the Buccaneers, someone asked him how long it took his offense to start clicking and performing the way he had hoped it would. And he said it was about a month. And now we're about a month in with the Jaguars. So maybe we'll start to see his offense bear a little more fruit. But so far, Thomas has only 1 game with more than 7 targets. He's only had 1 game with more than 55 receiving yards. He still hasn't had a touchdown catch, although he did have a touchdown run back in week 1. And Erickson said it, even though you wouldn't have thought it with the way Baker Mayfield diced him up last week. The Seattle pass defense is pretty good. And the Seahawks have one of the better secondaries in the league. So I do think it's kind of a tough matchup. Maybe the target share, we finally see BTJ get more than 7 targets with Brenton Strange out. But I'm just still sort of pumping the brakes until we get more positive signs.
Wide receiver 3s are coming up, but today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is top rated, probably because there's so many promos and so much to bet. Week 6 doesn't kick off until tomorrow, but on Hard Rock Bet, if you're doing some fantasy research for this week, don't forget to check out those players' odds to score on the Hard Rock Bet app. You're going to get a profit boost for Thursday night's game. If you want to parlay a few players to score, boom, maybe you can hit their yardage total. And if you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet yet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. It's a great day to download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit because tomorrow is Thursday. Every Thursday isn't just a new fantasy week, it's a new rewards drop on Hard Rock Bet. That means you get even more promos on top of that welcome offer. We talk fantasy every week. That's our thing. They dish out a whole lot of rewards and promos every week. That's their thing. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. Wide receiver threes, 25 through 36. We start with Zay Flowers at 25, followed by Calvin Ridley, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, Jacoby Myers, DJ Moore, T. Higgins, Keon Coleman. Final three is Romeo Doubs, Rashid Shaheed, and Matthew Golden. Can Zay Flowers exist with Cooper Rush? He comes in at 25 this week. That's kind of his rank all the time, I think, that floats out there. He's ECR 25. Fitz, you've got him at 29. Erickson, you are on ECR. Fitz, let's talk with you here. You're a little bit lower here. What's your take on Zay Flowers for week 6?
Yeah, I'm just concerned about what the Ravens offense is going to look like with Cooper Rush at quarterback. Presumably he will be the quarterback again. The Ravens go on bye in week 7. And, maybe the Ravens set Lamar Jackson again, just to make sure he comes back as healthy as possible in week 8. But can the Ravens move the ball well enough to get Flowers more than the 5 targets he saw last week? To his credit, he gave us a floor game. He caught all 5 of those targets for 72 yards. But the odds of getting a Zay Flowers ceiling game with Cooper Rush at quarterback seem pretty remote. The odds of getting a touchdown, not great. So I think there's more of a floor here than we normally get with Zay Flowers when Lamar Jackson is at quarterback.
I actually think that's like a good term to use, the floor and the ceiling, because was that 5 for 72 the absolute ceiling for Zay Flowers with Cooper Rush, Erickson? Or do you think there's more to be had? You've got him at ECR, so it's not like you're like pounding the table and having a parade for Zay Flowers or anything like that. But, you're at like 25, top of the ECR or top of the wide receiver threes. What's your take on Zay Flowers this week?
Well, I would say that if he scores on that long catch, then that would be his ceiling, would be 5 for 75 and a touchdown. But I think that that's the best case scenario with Zay Flowers. And if we think back to our debates during the offseason talking about Zay Flowers, we had concerns about his touchdown upside with Lamar Jackson as the quarterback. So I think on one end of the spectrum, because they're going to be facing negative game script, you have a situation where Zay Flowers actually may see double-digit targets, which wasn't always a thing when Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry were just running the show. So I think that there is that floor opportunity with Zay Flowers in a full PPR, but he's probably not going to catch a touchdown. He has to rip off at least 1 or 2 big plays, and that's probably more on him than the actual quarterback. Now, he's a really talented player, so that's always in his range. I think that he's probably that wide receiver 3 where there are 2 teams on bye. Unless you feel really great about your other options, like, am I going to start Hassan Haskins over Zay Flowers? Like, probably not. I don't think I'm there yet with Hassan Haskins. But if there are some other receivers that, I really like this guy's ceiling this week, I think I'm going to lean towards that because I know Zay is probably more of a floor play than a ceiling play. Again, last week, he had 5 for 72. He only ran 21 routes. The Ravens had no offensive plays because they played so bad and the Texans had the ball the entire time. So that's still in play because they're playing the Los Angeles Rams this week, which is not, again, a really tough matchup for their defense. So the Rams are going to score a ton of points. So, yeah, that's it for me on Flowers.
All right, I'm going to call an audible. We're calling an audible on a guy on a sheet here because we did not have him. So we'll get some live reaction just because it just hit me looking at this player and it didn't hit me before, is Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley jumps in at ECR 26, and I just wanted to get your guys' take on it. So apologies for calling the audible without the full prep here, but he's a guy that not only wasn't on this list, but was being talked about as a drop candidate. And it did occur to me, like, him coming in as one of the highest wide receiver threes has a lot of people back in the good graces. So Fitzy, maybe we can start with you. What is your take? I don't know where you have him ranked here, but what's your take on Calvin Ridley? Like, do you buy last week as being him back in this offense moving forward?
Where is Ridley in ECR?
26.
Oh, geez. No, I've got him wide receiver 34.
Okay.
I mean, like, he was having some major drop issues early in the season. And, good game against the Cardinals last week, although I think, he had that big 47-yard catch late to set things up. I'm not sure if I totally buy it yet with Calvin Ridley. He had no more than 57 receiving yards in any previous game. He had been 30 or fewer receiving yards in 3 of his first 4, and just really having major issues with his hands to the point where, like, he was briefly benched, I think, in week 4. So, yeah, I'm not quite ready to put Calvin Ridley back in the circle of trust.
Yeah, that's kind of the big question is he back in the circle of trust, Erickson? So he is 26. The rankers have him high. Fitzy does not. Where are you at?
I think I'm a little bit more optimistic just because we finally saw a good game from Calvin Ridley. I know that came late into that contest against the Arizona Cardinals, but this is something that I've been trying to keep in mind with 2 players last year that had rookie quarterbacks that started out the season really bad, veteran guys. And these were players I was comparing to Calvin Ridley. It was Courtland Sutton, who was terrible with Bo Nix to start the year last year, and Terry McLaurin was also equally bad with Jaden Daniels to start the year last year. So are we seeing now, okay, Calvin Ridley, he's played a month plus with Cam Ward, now they're finally starting to gel. So I'm a little bit more open to this being real, and they're also playing the Las Vegas Raiders. So it's not a defense that I'm afraid of in any capacity, especially when you look at how you beat the Raiders. The Raiders kind of throw everything at to kind of stop the run. So I think that you could see an opportunity where they're passing. And Alec Ayamanor, he's had opportunities to kind of like be the alpha in this offense. And it's looked like that was potentially happening. And now Calvin Ridley, is he, the Undertaker meme, right? He's coming back from being, left off from Ayamanor. Who, I was telling people, yeah, cut Ridley, add Ayamanor, because he looks like he's the guy. Not the case here last week. And I think that you could see something positive again for Ridley. So I don't really disagree with him as a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, and by the way, Ridley might be super matchup sensitive. Like, started with a nightmare matchup against Denver in week 1, then the Rams and the Colts, to, neutral to slightly tougher than average matchups. Got also struggled against the Texans, and then week 5 gets the injury depleted Cardinals secondary. And now he gets a pretty soft matchup against the Raiders. So maybe there is more hope than I'm giving him credit for with that wide receiver 34 ranking.
So what was your rank, Erickson?
Wide receiver 32.
32. Okay, no.
Much more optimistic than I am, man.
You set us up. You're like, I'm more optimistic. Like 2 spots higher than I was expecting, like 24, 20. I don't know.
I'm not crazy.
All right. You did get more optimism.
Optimistic.
All right. You laid out this whole thing and you're like, by the way, I'm 32. So I'm 6 spots lower than that. All right. That's a fun one. All right. This is going to be an interesting one. Ridley, there's going to be a lot of questions about. Romeo Doubs, there's going to be a lot of questions about this week. You had the touchdown bonanza. He comes in at ECR 34 this week. So that is a starting wide receiver. You guys are a little bit split. Fitzy, you got him at 40. Erickson, you got him at 35. Erickson's a little optimistic about Romeo Doubs. So Erickson, let's start with you. Let's hear about Doubs here. 35. He is a starter. What say you? Are you trusting that touchdown equity that he had, that he can kind of continue holding some fantasy relevance?
That's been his role since he's been on the Packers. He's always kind of been Jordan Love's go-to guy in the red zone. Now, it's not going to catch 3 touchdowns every single week, but is he going to catch another touchdown because he's facing the Bengals? That defense is just terrible. Yeah, I think that's very firmly in play. And if you catch a touchdown, it's pretty easy to finish as a top 36 wide receiver. So I think if you're hurting at receiver or flex, you want an upside play, I think Romeo Doubs can do that. Not just bad players, I don't think, score 3 touchdowns like Doubs does. So I think that he's a fine start as a back-end wide receiver 3. I know that the Packers like to spread the wealth, and I think that if Doubs doesn't end up delivering, it's just because, Tucker Kraft and Josh Jacobs scored all the touchdowns. And if that's what beats me with starting Doubs, then so be it. But this is a great matchup for him against a terrible defense, so I'm not going to overthink it when Jordan Love and the Packers have the highest implied team. If this Packers team is going to score the most points, you probably want the guy who has the most red zone equity among their wide receivers in your starting lineup. So that's the kind of way I see it, but I do understand that the floor probably isn't super high just because he doesn't see a ton of volume.
Fitzy, you got him at 40. Do you have Matthew Golden higher or Romeo Doubs higher?
I believe I've got...
Sorry, I threw that on you.
No, that's okay. I'll check it real fast. I think I have Doubs 1 spot higher than Golden.
Oh, so it's close enough that it's it's not like an immediate it's clearly this guy. That is interesting. You have Doubs ahead. So love to get your breakdown on Romeo Doubs. A little bit lower. You got him more of like a flex play this week in a 3 wide receiver setup.
Yeah, I mean, I have no beef with anyone who's starting Romeo Doubs this week. I just don't be too aggressive. If you have several good flex options. I would just say not to chase the 3-touchdown game that Doubs had against Dallas in week 4. Like, the target distribution in Green Bay is just so unpredictable. And I think there's a pretty good chance the Packers get a run-friendly game script as 14.5-point home favorites against the Bengals. And if that's the case, maybe Jordan Love throws fewer than 30 passes, because we know that if he can, Matt LaFleur is content to just run it 35 times against an overmatched opponent. So, plus our guy Debro has pointed out that Doubs is normally much better against man than zone, and the Bengals don't especially play man at a high rate. I think they're just kind of middle of the pack as far as that goes. So, yeah, Doubs is a reasonable option, but I wouldn't elevate him over other guys just because, like, you think the touchdown equity is going to repeat.
Last up here, a wide receiver that is not in the 36 that should be. You guys both put this player, so we're going to nix him, but Terry McLaurin's ranked just so low because of the injury stuff, but that would be a player that would be up there. You guys both put a couple different names. Why don't you each pick one? Fitzy, we'll start with you. Wide receiver that is not in the top 36 that you think should be this week.
I think Jauan Jennings also falls into that category for Erickson and I. Like, and that's the thing. He'll obviously be top 36 if we know for sure he's playing. I think that's still up in the air as of this recording. But for me, another guy would be Keon Coleman. He's wide receiver 39 in ECR. I have him wide receiver 32. I always think there's upside with the Bills' passing game, even though Josh Allen likes to spread it around.
Erickson, you got a name. You had Jauan Jennings, you had McLaurin in there, but you got one other name that you think is a top 36 guy this week that is not ranked that way.
Well, I actually wanted to talk more about Jauan Jennings because I'm just very confident that he is going to play this week and that Ricky Pearsall probably won't play this week. So what we saw Jennings has played one healthy game all year, and he went 5 for 89 on 10 targets with a touchdown. So he's kind of the forgotten 49ers wide receiver because we really haven't seen him put it all together aside from 1 week because he's been so banged up with several different injuries. But Tampa Bay, they don't have anybody. Like, we're talking about the Lions secondary. The Buccaneers secondary is also depleted by a ton of injuries. So this is a team that every year, Todd Bowles, their defense is a pass funnel defense. They sell out to stop the run, and then teams throw all over them, just like we saw last week with Seattle and Sam Darnold. So I'm very confident that I'm starting Jennings like this week, like as a top 20 guy. If he's out there, especially Pearsall's not. Kittle's definitely not going to be back. Shanahan said that's a long shot that he plays. And last year against the Buccaneers, Jennings 7 catches for 93 yards.
Rashid Shaheed was the other name, by the way, since Erickson wanted to talk about Jennings, which I got no problem about talking about Jauan Jennings, but Rashid Shaheed, another one of those guys to take a look at that's in the 36. There you go. You guys want to check out who is in the top 36 as every day changes and these ranks change. You can also see who Erickson, Debro, Fitzy, who they've individually got as well, just by going to fantasypros.com/rankings. If we did not answer a big question in your wide receiver world, well, guess what? We got a weekly start and sit live stream right here on our YouTube where you guys can come and ask specific start and sit questions Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern. So on the podcast, get on over to YouTube, youtube.com/fantasypros. Make sure you're subscribed. Click on the notifications so you'll get a little buzz when we go live and we can answer anything that we didn't hit for you. That's going to do it. Wide receiver ranks in the books for week 6 for Andrew Erickson and Pat Fitzmaurice. I'm Chris Welsh. We'll talk to you next time right here on Fantasy Pros.